Ethereum is absolutely blasting off right now, and we're going to look at why this is happening and where it could go next. Could it actually keep going past 5,000, way up to about $7,000? Let's take a look. I'm Brett at CryptoGX, and today we're talking about Ethereum. Let's just jump into it. I typically look at this particular website pretty much every day, looking at the trending coins. As you can see, Ethereum is here in the #2 spot, and over the past 7 days, it's up 26%. I also look at this website right here, Binance Square, to look at trending topics, and one of the trending topics over the past week or so has been Ethereum 4,500 next. And if you're familiar, you can see that the Ethereum price right now is already at 4,500. So this movement has happened, it has confirmed. So now I'm sure we're all wondering what is actually going to be happening next for Ethereum. So typically what I'll do is I'll take a look into this particular topic and I'll scroll through what people are talking about on, that particular topic. And one thing that I found was this particular post, which is very, very interesting, and it talks about lots of the technical reasonings behind what's happening with Ethereum. Now, I'll get into the technical stuff next, because a lot of what's really important with cryptocurrencies or investments as a whole, and in general, especially within cryptocurrency, it's all about what people are thinking in the market rather than necessarily technical stuff. Technical stuff is important, but let's look at actually what's happening. One of the things that I really like to do is go to coinmarketcap.com and you click the why is whatever coin's price up. It'll be different based on what's happening, but in this particular case, the Ethereum price is up rather than down. So the three main things that they're talking about here is whale accumulation, Ethereum demand surge, and technical breakout. So technical breakout we'll talk about in a second. The whale accumulation, as you can see right here, they had a mystery whale that withdrew 21,000 Ethereum from Binance in under 40 minutes. That is just one. You can't make a theory based on one particular whale, but they do have a broader movement of very large holders of Ethereum basically getting into Ethereum and potentially taking it off of the exchange. And lots of that happening over and over means that there, is either some particular one big investor or maybe even institutional investors that are scooping up as much Ethereum as they possibly can. Now, the main thing with this is the large withdrawals. Pulling the Ethereum off of the exchange means that they are planning on holding it for a long time. They're not planning on selling it and, changing the value in the opposite direction. At least the theory is, which, typically stands to reason, is that when you pull off large quantities from an exchange into personal wallets, that tends to drive the price up because of the confidence that it boosts in the market. Now, the next one here is ETF inflows hitting a record. Now, if you're not familiar with ETFs, especially in crypto, I have a video that I made here on the channel about that as well. So make sure to like and subscribe, and you can check out that particular video on what ETFs are. But if you're not familiar, the basic rundown is an ETF is a simple way for regular investors to get into any sort of cryptocurrency and invest in at least the idea of it without necessarily having to hold the crypto, especially if they're either not super tech savvy or if they have some regulations on the particular assets that they can and can't purchase. The main thing is that ETFs open up the ability to invest to a lot more people. For this case, it's, Ethereum. There are different ETFs. So if an ETF is announced, that's a good thing. But in this case, there are large inflows into BlackRock's ETHA ETF alone, holding 1.4 million Ethereum, which is $3.5 billion. Now, there's a stipulation here that ETFs allow staking, which means that they're yield generating assets, which is attractive to traditional investors. We have lots of videos on staking as well, so check out the channel for that. Now, the SEC is going to make a decision on staking enabled ETFs for Ethereum, which basically, if that happens, there's going to be a lot more money inflowing into Ethereum ETFs, because then investors are going to be attracted for the yield generating opportunity that these ETFs will have. So both of these big concept-wise, market-wise things that are happening are very, very important for Ethereum. And that's a great sign to see Ethereum skyrocketing up. Now you can see it's literally, I'm live doing this, it's at $4,600, which is crazy. And if I go, we're in the 7-day chart, 28% over the last 7 days. Now let's get into some of the technical factors. So I'll pull up the chart here on TradingView. Now, some of the most important things when looking at a particular Ethereum chart, or just a chart in general, are the moving averages, which I have here in two separate instances. And then the other thing that we'll talk about is lines of resistance and lines of support. So the moving averages, as you can see here, this red line is the 50-day moving average, and this blue line is the 200-day moving average. And the number that each of these is at is $3,400 and $2,800 respectively. And as you can imagine, these are the moving averages over that period of days. And right now, the price is higher than both the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average, meaning it's moving up. It's in a very bullish zone. Trading above the moving averages is very good. It's a great sign for Ethereum. As you can see, when it was trading above both before, it continued to rise, and then things changed and it went sideways for a while. Now, another really important thing for these moving averages, as you can see here, they cross from time to time. And typically, as the 200-day moving average moves below the 50-day moving average, aka the most recent 50 days have a higher average price than the entire average of the last 200 days. Typically, that is a bullish sign. So you can see as this crossed, the 50-day crossed above the 200-day, the Ethereum price was going up here. Then it crossed the opposite direction. Boom, we were going down. And it's most oftentimes a bit of a trailing indicator. You can see the price moved up before the cross happened. The price moved down here before the cross happened. And again, this was on July 10th for at least the day chart. The 50-day moving average is now above the 200-day moving average. And we've seen ever since then green candles, a little bit of a sideways here for the last week or so of July, and now again skyrocketing. So if you go back historically, this always follows for the most part. The cross happens, and then that's basically when the price movement moves the opposite direction. Now, another much easier indicator is this lower MACD indicator that I have right here. And as you can see, if we zoom in on the most recent days here, we flashed into this green zone, and things have been going up ever since. The volume is these red and green vertical lines. The volume has been trending the opposite direction towards the positive, and you can see that with the price movement going upwards as well. And even in just a regular 24-hour volume, you can see these last few days here were heavily green. And if we go back to this time range, mid-July, heavy positive volume, it's much higher than the previous days. All these days, about, 7 days of green, that pushed all of those inflows into Ethereum. Now, I've seen a lot of analysts that are targeting $7,000 from here. That is about, let's find out the movement from here. So if we're taking a look at exactly where we're at right now, at about $4,500, $4,600, the percentage increase to 7,000 is about 53%. And that's what people at the moment are hoping for out there. That's the ultimate bull case scenario. And if we look back on Ethereum entirely, the all-time high of Ethereum is basically right around where we're at right now. These highs, you can see if we look right up here for the price, the high was about 48.11. So if we bring this down just to get Ethereum back to where it was at the peak of last bull run, we'll do 48 flat. That is a 5% increase from where we are right now. So that's, in my opinion, the minimum bull case that we're getting in the short term at the very least. We could see pullbacks, and I'll show you why in a second, but let me put this back up to about 7,000. So in order to estimate our pullbacks, we're going to take a look at the resistance and support levels. And we actually don't need this estimated gain right here. I'm going to take out this particular MACD indicator right here, and then we're going to put our resistance. So we've got a small band right here because of this previous, top section at about 3,900. We've got another support and resistance around 3,400, and then way down here around 2,800. And this basically tracks from, all of these other recent tops, the tops and bottoms, of course. And the most recent one to really be thinking about, in my opinion, is this November timeline when we really started to take off. There was a lot of sideways movement right here around 3,400, and then obviously we have the top right here around the $3,900 range, which is not crazy far off, which is from where we've gotten. Percentage wise, it's really good, but we are in almost uncharted territory here. So the last place for our most recent place for us to fall is down to this $3,900, $4,000 area. In my opinion, that's about as far down as I think that we could go. And if we zoom in here as well on the at least daily, we see a little bit of a kind of stutter in the last few days here around the 4,200, 4,300 timeline. Now, because we're in such a big green candle today, I could see us potentially at least going down to 4,300. I could see a quick dip down to about 4,000 before taking off again, and probably some sideways movement because things have been so green for so long. Look at these big green candles. They go down, they have a lot of sideways movement, big green, and then, sideways. this. And then, even the opposite direction. If it's going big in the negative direction, then boom, we got a long sideways, or down and then a little bit sideways. So we're up very heavily. I expect tomorrow and through the rest of this week, some pretty solid sideways movement in the $4,500, $4,300 range, and a quick dip down to about 4,000 wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, but that's the area to be watching out for, in my opinion. And then you keep an eye on the shorter time frames of the MACD cross. So if we go into the 4 hour, as you can see, we're very heavily up here. 4 hours, a really great timeline to look at comes to the MACD cross. I probably wouldn't really want to go any lower than that personally, but if we do, let's say we go to the hour timeline, then it shows, even more crosses back and forth hourly. So you can see kind of the trend of this going down here, this going up. And if it starts to really pull back, you'll see that red line go much, much closer to 200-day moving average. And so I'd keep an eye out for that as well, just to decide whether or not you actually want to get in or not on this long position. Back from the technicals, obviously those are our particular spots to look out for. In my opinion, if we're going on a long position here, it is only going to be based entirely on the kind of fundamentals and market movement. The technicals are fantastic to decide whether or not the actual market consensus is valid. And in my opinion, the technical movement gives validation to the market consensus and, actual things that are happening. So these big ETF inflows and the big whale accumulation, in my opinion, are stronger because of the technical momentum that we're seeing. So I absolutely could see a movement up much, much further. I think this is now when we are finally getting our Ethereum breakout. As many of us know, typically in a Bitcoin bull cycle, we're going to see Bitcoin's going to fly first, and Bitcoin has done that. It's done its sideways movement as well. And then we wait for Ethereum to take off. And I think this is now when that is happening. We had a bit of a rally back in November and, we cooled off, same with Bitcoin. And now Bitcoin is up, but now Ethereum is really pumping past its previous high and into new territory. Not entirely. Our previous all-time high is still yet to be beat, but we don't want to wait necessarily for that all-time high to be making decisions about what we're going to do. And so after Ethereum pumps, then altcoins are going to pump and altcoin season is going to start. So I would say all of this is really, really positive for the long-term course of this bull run. Very much keep an eye on things. I am putting into my altcoin bags, absolutely, and keeping an eye on Ethereum for this next big move. I think blowing past 5,000 is well within the realm of possibility. And personally, that $7,000 target in the short term is not crazy. I think that could possibly happen. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really interested to understand what your thoughts. If you want to get some Ethereum, I'll leave links to Coinbase and crypto.com where you'll get at least $50 of free crypto just for signing up with those links. And if you want meme coins, I'll leave a link to MoonShot where you'll get to claim some free meme coins just for signing up with that particular link. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay tuned for all things crypto. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.